Welcome, everyone, to Color Commentary. We are your pauper commentators, Michael Petchek and Adrian Guarzales. How's it going, Adrian?
Oh, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Things are good.
Yeah.
What? Were you expecting a bit there or something? Everything's fine.
Well, here at this point, you know, it's been going so long that whether you do a bit or not, you're actually just doing a bit because it's just reached the point of absurdity. All right, our upkeep. You've got some announcements to kick us off here.
Yes, I went 5-0 with Boros Monarch, a feat I will never let any of you live down. But what it has done, even if I hadn't done well, I'd like to think people would still like to watch me. And actually, the response to those videos was pretty overwhelming. We got a lot more YouTube subscribers. We got a lot of positive affirmation. So I'm going to keep making those weekly videos. It just so happens that the video we're doing this week is also the podcast episode. So by the time you're listening to this, non-patron subscribers, I will have already posted those. So you can look forward to some complimentary content this weekend. I don't know if it's going to always be that way going forward, but certainly there will be videos. But we just got a really spicy list in this week. So we really wanted to explore it.
Yeah, and we're definitely, you're the one producing the content. You're going to do it when you've got the time. It's not going to be a guarantee, but, nice little bonus content. I do have to say, you immediately, as soon as you gave me no warning until I saw it in, like, the group chat, and it was just like, oh, yeah, I made some videos. I went 5-0. And even knowing that you went 5-0, there were a couple of those matches that were real nail biters. Good quality content.
Thank you.
All right, so we've got those. Just want to say we have an affiliate link over at Original Magic Art. If you like old art, old classic art, or magic art that's not being replicated anywhere else, I just got a message the other day from the owner of Original Magic. They are going to be producing exclusively Karn liberated playmats with the original art from the artist. They're doing this as a series. They've done like Hymn to Torok. They've done I think Yavimaya Coast was one that they did. But they also do that. They do classic art pieces as tokens and playmats and dice bags. If you go shop there, we got an affiliate link on our website, and also use the affiliate coupon code Commontary to get 5% off your order. Helps out the show, all that good stuff. You get good quality products. I know at least one person is bot selling using our affiliate code, so that makes me happy. Also, we are on Patreon. This week there was an extra 10 minutes at the beginning of the episode, probably going to be another 5 at the end of it. You can get, unedited versions. Sometimes I say the word heck in the uncensored version, and I'm very tempted to censor that out of the open version. But if you contribute to our Patreon, there's all sorts of rewards you can get. You can even direct an episode, choose everything we're doing in an episode, and we just kind of have to roll with it.
Last one, that was the user one.
Yep. And actually super well received. Apparently a bunch of people were waiting for us to cover Tortured Existence. I think that's all of our kind of upkeep and just little reminder things at the beginning of the show. So yeah, Original Magic Art. We've got weekly videos or semi-weekly videos coming thanks to Adrian, and we're on Patreon. Adrian, do you want to introduce and walk us through this deck list so I can sit here and make snide comments?
Yeah, dude, absolutely. So today we're covering a deck that I've considered tier 2 for forever. It's Midnight Gond. But thanks in part to the efforts of Deluxikov and then the winner of last week's Pauper Challenge, Methonical, it's back on the radar. And really, it's the Midnight Gond combo you know and love, making infinite tokens. But this time, we're actually playing Rally the Peasants. So it's actually kind of a Rally the Peasants list with an infinite combo. And I think I stole that from someone on Reddit who said that. I don't remember who said that, but that really resonated with me. Go ahead.
It kind of, one of the failings of earlier versions of this deck was, you'd have stuff like Sprout Swarm and Scatter the Seeds and Selesnya Evangel in a lot of these lists. And, they were good to kind of grind stuff out, but you didn't really have a flashy way to kind of get in there until you went infinite. It was kind of a little too all in on the combo. And this one, really the big thing is it kind of has a lot of stuff in common with, in terms of win cons with some of the more token heavy hands out of Boros Monarch or Kabatha
Boros Monarch, a deck I know very well. Someone on Reddit called me a renowned Boros player, and that made my day. Thank you.
Oh, just had to get it into the main show, didn't you?
Yeah, I also said that in the pre-show, but I can never toot my own horn enough. So we have 16 creatures in the deck. 12 of them cost W. One of them is Benevolent Bodyguard, and this is really key to the deck. Benevolent Bodyguard is a 1/1 out of, I want to say, Judgment originally, but it's been reprinted several times since. And it's a 1/1 human cleric for W. Says sacrifice Benevolent Bodyguard. Target creature you control gains protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. It's almost like we might have a creature in the deck that we don't want dead.
Yeah.
Up next. Sorry, go ahead.
It also just, sometimes like it's, if you can chip in for lethal and your opponent only has one color of creature on the board, like this does have alternate uses. They're kind of narrow, but for example, if you have this guy out and your opponent say has Crypt Rats or Even Car's Justice without buyback, and it's going to completely wreck you, you can use this to at least keep something alive, right?
Right. Up next, it also gets +2/+0 if you play Rally the Peasants. Up next, we have 8 copies of the same card. How do we have that, you might wonder? We have 4 copies of Soul Warden and 4 copies of Soul's Attendant, the infamous Soul Sisters. They are both W11s, but slightly different. Soul Warden says whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life. Soul's Attendant says whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you may gain 1 life. So it is actually a subtle distinction there. One of them is a may, and one of them just happens.
And I feel like it's worth mentioning, since, a decent amount of people are going to be playing on Mitgo. Remember to always yield to the Soul's Attendant trigger.
Yeah, absolutely. They'll save you a ton of clicks.
You always want, and this is a very click intensive deck, especially if you draw into the combo. Like you're going to be clicking a lot of cards over and over to get the desired effect. So just save yourself the headache ahead of time.
Yeah. Up next, we have and I'll get into the Soul Sisters a little bit later in our deck discussion, because I think they're actually a big reason why the deck is good. Up next, we have 4 copies of Midnight Guard, which is a 2/3 from Dark Ascension, 2 and a white. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, untap Midnight Guard. That seems busted for a common.
I mean, it's a weird ability, and I'm not sure why this ever actually saw print in the set that it did. It was originally in Dark Ascension, and I've been unable to figure it out. It's kind of like this weird vigilance if you cast a creature during your second main phase.
Yeah, limited. Well, if you remember, also in Innistrad, so not in the same set, but in the same block, there was also the Village Bellringer, which was a flash creature. Whenever it enters the battlefield, untap all creatures you control. So it's not like that mechanic was super out of place for white in that block, but I agree. It seems very interesting that both of those abilities were printed at common.
Yeah, I just don't remember what the payoff was. Also noteworthy, this guy works really well with previous versions of this deck would run stuff like, as I mentioned, Sprout Swarm, which has Convoke, and Convoke on a token maker with this guy kind of lets him tap multiple times for more than one quote unquote mana. Not really producing mana, just paying for a spell as though he was. Minor distinction, but super neat card. And again, like I don't know when Lorwyn released, or Shadowmoor, excuse me, but the other part of the combo is far removed from this dude.
And in fact, why don't we go ahead and skip to the enchantment section, and we'll come back to sorcery as an instance later. Presence of Gond is, the deck is traditionally called Midnight Gond, and it's because Presence of Gond is like you said, a Shadowmoor enchantment, 2 and a green enchant creature. Enchanted creature has tap, put a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token to play. I guess now it's templated as create an elf warrior creature token. But yeah, so together these 2 cards make infinite dudes.
Yeah, and this is ostensibly similar to the Splinter Twin combo in formerly Modern, and I guess it has occasionally shown up in Legacy events. So this one, however, does lack the haste, so you got to survive one more turn after you make them.
Well, it's not that. Oh yeah, the tokens had haste, but it's not like the creatures you were creating. Like they had flash, right? So you'd flash them in turn 3, and then turn 4 you'd slam the twin, and then those tokens have haste. And you can go from there.
But this is a neat little combo. I ran this actually right when Pats was starting to have pauper events on a routine basis, and it was awful. I did a lot of lot of 1-2, 1-3 nights. It was not good.
Well, in the meta back then, we can say that for the discussion. The meta has shifted to a place where this deck is much better than it used to be, I think.
Yeah.
Going into our sorceries and instants, we have 4 copies.
We got one more enchantment. Hold on.
Sorry. 2 copies Journey to Nowhere. 1 and a white. Whenever Journey to Nowhere enters the battlefield, exile target creature. Whenever Journey to Nowhere leaves the battlefield, return the exiled card to the battlefield under its owner's control. This is surprisingly good removal again.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It was bad for a long time, and now it's good again. And I think part of that is the fact that that Hexproof or Boggles hasn't really been putting up the numbers, especially in the challenge events that it does in the leagues.
Yeah, and it was bad during Drake era, and I remember that's when it first got kind of terrible.
Yeah.
So can I go to the spells now?
Yeah. Now you can.
Thanks, Mike. We have 4 copies, Commune with the Gods. Why do we have Commune with the Gods? We're not a mill deck. 1 under green gets us a sorcery. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a creature or enchantment card from among them into your hand. Put the rest into your graveyard. Now, this card is good because it's the only, and I hope you were with me when I say this, it's the only blue effect this deck has.
Yeah. I mean, it digs it. This is ostensibly like the front half of Forgotten Alchemy. If you want to get real wacky about it.
Yeah. So it's the only card in the deck that lets you draw more cards, which is good because, in green, white, and kind of red, you don't really have access to these, cantrips that would normally help you assemble your combo.
Yeah. Now there is some, discussion to be had here as to whether this might be better as the new version of this effect, the one from Amonkhet, Benefaction of Ronas. They can get both an enchantment and a creature. Especially because this deck generally, its 3 drops are good, but most of them are not winning the game on the spot. But
it's 3 drops. I think its 3 drops are Midnight Guard and Presence of God.
Yeah. I don't know. It's if you're not, I think my thing is if you're not comboing out, Benefaction of Ronas can draw you into both combo pieces potentially.
Yeah.
If you are comboing out, you just don't play it. But yeah, I think that's, a minor difference here and there. But Commune with the Gods will take care of a vast majority of what you need it to.
Exactly. Up next, we have 3 copies of Prismatic Strands, and this is becoming more and more a very popular main deck card. I imagine because it's very good versus Stompy, and incidentally is good versus the Skred Delver decks. It's 2 and a white for an instant. Prevent all damage that sources of the color of your choice would deal this turn. Flashback, tap an untapped white creature you control. So not only does this fog, if you're behind in a game and need just a couple more turns to assemble your combo, it also protects your combo pieces from getting blown out from something like Electrickery or Wail of the Nim. Unfortunately, this doesn't stop stuff like Shrivel, but it does stop any of the damage sweepers.
Yeah, it also, sometimes if you've got a pretty big board presence but can't really punch through and your opponent doesn't have any big creatures, you can use this to set up very favorable trades for you. The fact that it flashes back with a relatively negligible cost in this deck is really cool. And again, the fact that it can stop, a removal spell if need be. It can stop a swing with a bunch of creatures. It can stop a wrath effect. It slices and dices. It does it all, right?
Slice and dice is an actual card.
I know. I actually, minor sidebar. I don't know if you saw the standard throwback tournament for this week, but it's the early 2000s and Astral Slide is in there. And I kind of want to get on Mitgo and play that.
Do it, dude. Filthy Mac user.
But continue.
So up next, we have 2 copies Rally the Peasants, traditionally seen in the Boros tokens list, Golgotha tokens list, what have you. I make my case for putting it in the Monarch list as well. This card kind of changed. I mean, it was one of the EMA downshifts that has somewhat changed the format, but definitely not the extent of Drake, and it was definitely overshadowed by Drake. It's a 2 and a white for an instant. Creatures you control get +2/+0 until end of turn. Flashback 2 and a red. So just a very strong finisher in the Swarm style of deck. And it makes it so that this deck doesn't need to combo with Presence of Gone to win. You know, our next card, and forgive me for going a little fast here, is 4 copies of Battle Screech. Put 2 1/1 white bird creature tokens with flying on the battlefield. Flashback, tap 3 untapped white creatures you control. So, you know, four birds off 1 card, and 2 copies of Sin's Enlistment, which is 4 for 2 white Kithkin Soldier creature tokens, and it has Retrace. So really, we are a token deck with Rally the Peasants that also has an infinite combo in it, and I just think that is so cool.
Yeah, and there's a lot to unpack here. Like Battle Screech does have this neat little synergy with Midnight Guard. You can tap it for the flashback; it untaps. Rally the Peasants is one of those cards where I don't think it's like, I think it was kind of a sleeper hit when EMA came out, because it, you know, no one plays Trumpet Blast, right? That's just, it's not a good effect. But it turns out if you staple 2 Trumpet Blasts onto 1 card, it's actually a really, really solid finisher. Because the first time I ever played against, I think it was you on Golgotha Boros, and out of nowhere, you suddenly just go, oh yeah, 20 you. I was like, oh, that's what this card does. Like it just wrecks house.
Yeah, dude, it's a good card. You know, obviously it's very bad when you're behind. If you're using it to like wipe your opponent's board, you're in a tough spot. But if you can just end the game on the spot, you know, why not? It's a great card.
Yeah. Actually, I just spotted something about this list that I absolutely love, and it's the fact that there are 23 lands in this deck. And frankly, I have been getting like minor anxiety attacks about how few lands people have been running in lists these days. But how about you take us through this land base here?
Don't mind if I do. 2 copies of Ash Barrens and Holy Balls. Excuse me, we might want to edit that out. Are Ash Barrens really almost $6 a pop? That's insane. But yeah, they're format staples, so there you go. At 2 Ash Barrens for cycling for our basics. We run 1 forest, 1 mountain for the flashback cost of Rally the Peasants, and 5 plains. We also run 4 copies Blossoming Sands, the green-white game land. 1 copy Boros Garrison, again for the flashback cost. 2 copies of Holdout Settlement. Holdout Settlement is Springleaf Drum on a land, and it combos, like I think, like you said before, with Midnight Guard, and it helps us reach red mana. So really, we're able to get all the red mana we need without actually having, only having 1 mountain in our deck. Next, we have 4 copies of Call Me Garden, which is a Zendikar special, part of that original cycle of Zendikar lands. And it's battlefield tapped, and it creates a 0/1 green plant token. Traditionally, you see this kind of card in stuff like Boggles that's looking for some Edict fodder, but you know, again, it gets +2/+0, same as all your other guys. So it's much better in this deck.
Yeah, there is kind of that element of, you know, well, an 0/1's not great, but a 4/1 sure is.
Yeah, exactly. And it combos well with your Soul Warden Soul's Attendant.
Yeah. Plus, you know, in against aggressive matchups, it is a free chump block, which can, you know, help soak up a little bit of damage and keep you alive a little bit longer, which I do like as well.
Rounding it out, we have 3 copies of Selesnya Sanctuary for picking back up our Calmy Gardens and Ash Barrens, and I guess even our Blossoming Sands in a pinch. So a lot of utility here in the mana base.
Yeah, I really like the inclusion of Holdout Settlement just because there are so many creatures being generated. That red splash is very vital, and I'm really kind of glad to see Holdout Settlement finally finding a home, because that was one of the ones that during the Oath of the Gatewatch release, I was like, this seems like it could be good, and it's never really managed to find itself a good spot in the meta. And finally, there's this 3-color tokens deck that actually cares about being able to hit this one specific splash as a finisher, and it just fits perfectly. And again, I'm so happy to see someone playing a reasonable amount of lands in a deck, because Oh man, it is. It sometimes feels like a race to the bottom of the land count at this point. So good on the good on the deck creators.
Yeah, definitely. Moving to our sideboard, we got a spicy one. 2 copies Relic of Progenitus. Helps with those pesky graveyard matchups. 1 copy Flaring Pain, which I thought was pretty interesting. Why would we want Flaring Pain? I guess to combat fog decks.
I would say combat fog and more specifically combat opposing prismatic strands because people are running them now. But yeah,
You're
just
so right.
what is it? What am I talking about? Dinrova Tron has been running like a 4-copy main deck of Moments Peace.
You're right. So yeah, there definitely are decks that are main decking fogs and prismatic strands, and so those are very useful here. 1 extra copy Journey to Nowhere, board and some extra removal. 2 copies Ray of Revelation, which is actually one of my favorite sideboard cards, because there are plays with it where you like totally blow your opponent out. Like I've had games where I Ray of Revelation, a Journey to Nowhere, and block with Carapace Forger and kill their guy, and it's beautiful. Ray of Revelation has surprisingly a large amount of utility in Pauper. There are a lot of enchantments you want to blow up, so I like that card a lot.
Yeah, obviously, this is the color or the original version. What is it? Ancient Grudge is the color shifted version of this. Really, really solid card. Again, another Judgment special. Lots of good early 2000s vibes.
Cards.
Yeah,
I mean, Battle Screech.
Yeah,
Benevolent Bodyguard. Then we have 2 copies of Standard Bearer, a Hot Apocalypse special, which I think I've mentioned before is one of my favorite sideboard cards ever. It's just very, very powerful at what it does. And it's probably pretty good in the mirror. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Then we have... Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say Standard Bearer is very good, especially in a stompy filled meta. Standard Bearer can make games crawl to a halt if your opponent's on like a lot of pump spells and auras. It just kind of stops things from happening.
You're just sitting back gaining life.
Yep.
3 copies of Oblivion Ring. This is for problematic permanents that your journeys don't hit. What are some that we are interested in removing in Pauper? The ones I can think of off the top of my head are like, I don't know, Bone Splitter.
So I've been seeing in the results, since I monitor those more than I actually get to play these days, I've been seeing some resurgence of black-blue control lists, especially a couple of people have been on teachings using Curse of the Bloody Tome as a win con. So it can deal with enchantments. I think it's more the fact that this is a versatile answer and it can kind of nab whatever you need it to. It's never going to be the most efficient way to do it, but it does answer pretty much every threat your opponent could have.
Okay. And then we have 4 copies of Spider Silk Armor, which is actually very good versus Skred Delver, because all of your tokens get reach and have +0/+1. Traditionally, you would board this in to combat stuff like Electrickery, but I'm not actually sure that this deck is really in the market to do something like that, simply because, not for just Electrickery alone, simply because we have 3 copies of Prismatic Strands. Now, that's not to say that Spider Silk Armor isn't good against Electrickery decks, but I do think it is especially good against Skred Delver because you're able to block all their 1/1s, all their flyers, and they'll probably be boarding an Electrickery against you.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that's your UR Delver kind of option. I really like Spider Silk Armor just in general as a sideboard card. The fact that it does grant reach kind of makes it win over what is the other one? Lumithread Field, the one that you can morph or just cast as an enchantment. The reach is really important.
Lumithread Field can be a creature, though. Ever important?
Yes. I mean, you could technically make the argument that it gains life off your soul sisters. Excuse me. Could gain life off your soul sisters, but I'm not seeing a whole lot of instances in matchups where your opponent is where you want the toughness boost effect and also life gain. Because Scred Delver is not putting you on a super fast clock unless they have the turn 1 flip Delver into like turn 2. Oh, well, turn 2 flip Delver, and then turn 3 like flip the other Delver blind. Like, apart from those sorts of starts, they're generally not putting the world's fastest clock on you. So I can't imagine that being able to get an extra creature out of your survival like anthem effect is really going to be super relevant. But it's super cool to see this deck win a challenge. Like the challenge was what, 97 people, I think.
Yeah, it was something pretty big.
Like this deck fought through about 10 rounds worth of opponents and must have done pretty well. I mean, just looking at the stuff in the finals, like it beat some, what people would consider more quote unquote real decks. And this is
let's say more meta decks.
Yeah. More established decks. And, for a deck that even I am like, Midnight Gaunt, it's janky and, sure, it's Pauper Splinter Twin, Like, I'm kind of, going to have to eat a little crow. Like, it's kind of good.
Let's talk about why it's good, because I think that's equally important is the environment that it's currently in, which is very slanted towards aggressive decks. I don't think this deck beats Control. I think it beats Stomping. I think it beats Scred Delver, which is more than enough because, look, we have 8 Soul Sisters, which is huge. Gaining the life is huge against those decks. We have 3 copies of Prismatic Strands. Again, huge against those decks. We have cards like Battle Screech that make us a ton of dudes, gain us a ton of life, and then just sit there, and the Stompy player is not able to effectively deal with them. And then we can, of course, in the game with the Presence of Gone combo or with a Rally the Peasants. So I think that's why this deck is really shining right now, is that it has the tools to beat aggro.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that kind of trapped at least me at the beginning was, as a sort of dyed-in-the-wool Control player, I was like, man, there's no good removal that kind of lines up well against these super aggressive Burning Tree Emissary decks. And I think that this deck kind of figured it out. You have incidental life gain, but it's not your only plan. You definitely have the games where you get the combo early and you can just kind of, Soul Sister into 20 extra life with minimal effort and kind of be safe. But at the same time, it also has just enough like interesting effects. Like Sen's Enlistment is, like how bad does it feel to counter a Sen's Enlistment when your opponent still has cards in hand? Like they can just retrace it.
So, Sen's Enlistment is great, and I think it definitely puts in a lot of work in this deck. We have 23 lands. We don't need 23 lands, right? This deck wants like maybe 6 at the most. And then after that, you just get, 2 1/1 white kicking soldier creature tokens into play. I just read the card. I don't know why. The flavor text says the more the scarier. I've never noticed that.
I didn't know it had flavor text. I would have figured that Retrace, given that it has a dearth of reminder text on it, would have taken up all the space.
It's pretty funny.
But yeah, like I think the fact is, as with any really resilient combo deck that can sort of go the distance, a la as much as it pains me to say this, something like Splinter Twin in Modern, the fact that this deck can just play another game and occasionally has an infinite combo in it is really not to be understated.
Now let's be frank here though, before everyone says to ban Midnight Guard or something. This deck is not Splinter Twin. This deck does not have Electrolyze. This deck does not have flash creatures. This deck does not have Bolt even. Splinter Twin was a good because it was also blue-red. And so it was able to efficiently protect its own combo while dealing with your threat simultaneously by 2-for-1ing you. This deck doesn't really do that. It can't. It's got sorcery speed removal. It has prismatic strands. It's not. They're not really like. Yes, they both make infinite creatures, but they're not the same thing.
Yeah, I do think that there are some parallels to be drawn. As I stated, they both have a backup
100%.
game plan of like with Splinter Twin, it was just, I'm just going to flash things in, counter your stuff and, protect a 2-power or 1-power creature and beat in with it every turn. And this one,
absolutely.
the alternate plan is I'm going to Battle Screech and then I'm going to Rally the Peasants, and you better have some sort of way to deal with this or you're just dead.
Right. And I definitely agree with you on that angle. I just don't think it's ever going to take up the metagame share that Splinter was taking, nor is it going to be, like Splinter was kind of the face of the format for a while after Pod got banned. And I just don't think it's going to be the same sort of impact.
Yeah. And I definitely, we talked about it way back in the day, about quote unquote fair combo decks. This is a combo deck that I 100% can guarantee to you I would not feel bad sitting it down across the table from. Like this, if they get the combo off on me, I feel like, congratulations, you assembled 2 cards out of your entire deck that represent an infinite combo, but it would never feel like there's ways to respond to that. Like this deck does not like Crypt Rats.
Yeah, I played against a Crypt Rats deck earlier and I barely beat it because Prismatic Strands is terrible against Crypt Rats.
Yep. Prismatic Strands in response to a Crypt Rats activation just means they're going to activate it again.
Yeah.
Like, I like the fact that there are ways to play to beat this deck that are not difficult. The decks that do well against this deck are not going to be considerably disadvantaged against the rest of the metagame. You're just going to have to play tightly and, know how this deck functions in order to beat it. And I'm really happy. I'm happy there's a combo deck that did well. I'm also happy for what it's worth that there's a weird tokens deck doing well. So I don't know. Congratulations to Mythonical for their win with this. It's super cool. And I'm really glad for once that we get to talk about a rogue deck that put up a very serious result and sort of the implications of that.
And I think we'd be remiss again to not mention Deluxe's contributions to the deck.
Certainly. And actually talking about rogue decks kind of segues us into the first discussion topic that you picked out for us, Adrian. And this has been going around Twitter today, and we figured we'd talk about it. For reference, we're recording on Wednesday.
Do we have a soapbox for you today?
Yeah, it's about one of those dirty words that people seem to think is a terrible sin against Magic, and
it rhymes with debt necking.
Okay, you got me. It's been a day. I found comedy there. Net decking. So for those people who may have just gotten into the game and may not have played another CCG or TCG before this, net decking is a term used to malign people who have copied a list online that has done well and then usually beat you with it.
What's hilarious to me. Sorry, go ahead. I have something hilarious to say.
Go ahead. Get us into this conversation.
I feel like some of the same people who complain about net decking are the first to tell new players to check MTG Goldfish for what the good decks are. There's a meta game. Decks are good. Any game, I don't care which game it is, there is an optimal way probably to play the game. I said probably there at the end because I then started thinking about Go, and I actually don't know anything about that game, so I decided to give it the benefit of the doubt here because that game's very confusing. There's an optimal way to play almost every game, and the idea that people are not going to try and win by playing the best thing available to them is absolutely ludicrous. The internet exists for better or for worse. And there are sites like MTG Goldfish that are willing to post results and willing to show us what the top performing decks are. And that's just the way that the beast works. That's true of any TCG game or CCG game. No matter what you're playing, there's a best deck.
Yeah, and it's not even maybe the best deck. It's oh wow, I kind of wanted to play something along the lines of this in Pauper, and someone already came up with a list. I'm going to take this list, pilot it, and figure out if there's something I can change. There's the people who are successful, quote unquote, net deckers are usually taking a list as a starting point and refining it. I think that, there are certainly probably people out there who just copy a list and never change it and never consider changing it. And they just are happy playing what they're playing. But I feel like a lot of the time, especially with older formats, it's okay, I'm going to use this deck list as a starting point. I'm going to, play some practice matches with it. Oh, this deck has problems with X, Y, and Z. I'm going to make these substitutions and, tweak it a little bit and get it to a point where I feel more comfortable piloting it. And this is, less true in some formats. Like I feel like Legacy, you can net deck something in Legacy, but A, the communities are small, and B, God, there are so many weird cards in Legacy that you can play, and you can totally justify any one of them. But I don't know. I feel it's weird because I also dislike the opposite stance of people playing bad decks should stop and just play meta decks. Like, I think that's an equally bad take.
I honestly think Magic is a game about, and this goes back to sort of player psychology profiles. Magic is ultimately a game about expression, right? Whether that be you want to win, whether that be you like the lore, whether that be you like big spells or you like comboing. And I just don't think that you should have the right to rain on anyone else's parade based on how they enjoy the game, even if they're playing stacks. That's a deck that exists. That's a deck that's not banned, and people can play what they want to play. And I think it's terrible when people try and bring other people down for just trying to enjoy the game. Like if you hate decking that bad, don't play the game. Or invent a format where you're not allowed to net deck, which will inevitably have a best deck in it as well. I promise.
Yeah, and I mean you definitely see this with when new like fan formats come out. Like I'm gonna go to not to pick on it since it's kind of most of the way in the grave, but what was it, Tiny Leaders? When that first came out, people were like, oh man, it's a brewer's paradise. The format was solved in like 2 months. Like people seriously honed that to a razor edge and were just like, these are the 3 decks you play. Like there's no reason to play anything besides these 3. Deal with it. And
I will admit that is a problem.
Yeah. And that's certainly like it's a casualty of us living in a modern era with access to this information at all times of the day. Like I could get on Goldfish first thing in the morning if I wanted to and check out the list from the last month, put something together and play it that evening. Like there's nothing stopping that. Like there's a lot of information, and there are people out there who have claimed that, maybe we should restrict information for publishing results on MitGo and, sort of stick to bigger events.
Censorship.
Yeah, sure. But I don't know. I think if nothing else, the data informs people who are brewing. Like, can you imagine being like, well, I found these 2 cool cards I want to build a deck with, but I have no idea what the metagame is like. And these 2 cards happen to, B5 drops, and I show up in a Pauper League, and then all of a sudden I'm realizing that Burning Tree Emissary sometimes just segues into another Burning Tree Emissary. And I'm having a really bad time because I didn't know that there is a super aggressive deck in the format right now. So it's one of those things where I can see both sides of the argument, and I think they're both incredibly wrong, especially because like we just talked about what is essentially a rogue/brew deck that, the building blocks have been there for a while.
And I looked up on the internet, and you know what? I built it and I played it today. It felt good.
Yeah, like there's nothing wrong with that. And one of the interesting things you said is like Magic is a form of expression, and it was weird because my coworker is super into EDH Commander and sort of more casual formats. And, I was talking with him, and I think the subject came up about the fact that he has, what is it? Oloro built. And Oloro is this sort of dirtily thing. And I'm like, I don't know. Like I don't see any good way to build Oloro. And he's like, if you build a bad deck, people are just going to, not want to play. And I'm like, oh, that's right. Like this is a format controlled by a social contract. This is weird because I am used to, trying to play decks that are efficient to the highest degree possible. Like I'll admit I play some jank, but I try and make sure that jank is just, as razor sharp as possible. Like I put actual effort into it. And so I've definitely been experiencing a little bit of being the super spiky person at the table. And it's a little bizarre to me because I'm usually, at least when I lived in Austin and, our Pauper scene was pretty competitive, I always felt like I was, kind of doing more casual stuff because I'm like, I'm going to show up with a weird combo deck. I'm going to show up with this dirtily control deck, even if the meta is not friendly to it. And I don't know. It was an interesting chance to see stuff from another perspective. And also, I don't know. It's just let people have their fun, man. Like, things are rough enough in day-to-day life. Just let someone have fun with a children's card game. Jeez, how hard is it?
Yeah, that's sort of the same. I mean, I lean in the same way. I think that the end result to having middle ground. Let brewers brew. Let people want to metagame, and net deck. And I mean, that's also to say, like, you brought up an interesting point. Brewers are still metagaming to an extent. That data benefits them just as much as it benefits, people like me who want to look up what the hot deck is and play it. And I'll admit that's how I picked decks. That's how I picked up Kuldotha Boros. I was like, that deck looks good. I'm going to play that deck now.
Yeah, it's definitely like, and again, like, there are very few people who are like, man, I looked up this deck and it's perfect and I'm never going to change a single thing about it. Like, some people might not be like me, where it's like, okay, well, I've taken exhaustive notes while playing 4 rounds of Magic, and I've got some stuff to consider here. And, it might not be people going, well, I found this list online and punch some of the numbers on these this mana base into a hypergeometric calculator, and I want to tweak this. But I kind of refuse to believe that this mythical net decker who just is stealing the top list offline every week and playing and only that,
placing really high in every tournament.
Yeah,
because that's another thing we're not really talking about is even if you net deck, if you're not a good player, you're not going to see the same sort of results.
Mm-hmm. And
also
vice versa. Like, some people can perform really well with decks that might not be, tier 1 meta decks because they are really good pilots and can see lines really well, and they just understand how the deck works intuitively. So I don't know. It's one of those things where these two people are coming from opposite sides, and in the end are both reaching completely fallacious conclusions about the other side.
I mean, isn't that just like the human condition?
Wow, this podcast got far deeper because it's mostly bad dad jokes. But yeah. Okay, so that's net decking. We got a question on Twitter. Do you want to intro this bit?
Yes, Jacob from Twitter. I refrained from using your last name. I didn't know how private you wanted to be. Jacob on Twitter, you asked us about building and maintaining a Pauper Gauntlet, which is a subject we have touched on before, but is one that I am more than willing to touch on again because I find maintaining paper collections to be the ultimate chore. So, Mike, why don't you tackle this one?
Okay, so a gauntlet or battle box, or some people even refer to them as like extended dual decks, whatever term you want to do. Keeping around a bunch of pauper decks to play against each other is kind of tricky. And the last time we covered it, it was definitely in a different meta. Like, we're definitely like a couple of major releases away from the last time we covered this, and it's probably a good idea to talk about it again.
Decks change.
Yeah, decks change, the meta changes. Like, Blue-Red Delver was not a thing 6 months ago. Now, off the top of your head, what would you include if someone was like, I want a representation of the pauper metagame, and, I want, like, let's say 8 decks to play against each other? What would be some of the ones where you're like, this has to be there?
Well, Mike, I would pull up MTG Goldfish and see what 8 decks are on there. And actually, the top 8 on MTG Goldfish is very varied. We have Stompy, Scred Delver, UR, whatever you want to call it, Affinity, Kuldotha Boros, Tron Control, Boggles, Deemer Control, and then Burn. And let me actually check the Deemer Control list here real fast, see what kind it is. It's the Chittering Rats, which is what I suspected. So here we have stuff. We have a mid-range deck. We have 2 control decks. We have one extremely uninteractive aggro deck. We have Stompy, which is an aggro deck. We have Burn, and we have like a fish style deck in Scred Delver. I think that's a pretty good representation of what the decks you can expect to face online. And I think that all those decks are fine against each other because some of them have good matchups in this top 8, and some of them have bad matchups in this top 8. Burn is probably a throwaway because Burn is cheap online, honestly, though.
Yeah, I kind of like the inclusion of Burn just because it does represent a very different style of deck. People have referred to Burn as a combo deck, and it's one of those weird kind of like defies archetypes kind of thing where, yes, it has elements of a combo deck in it, but it's also kind of an aggro deck, but you're playing almost no creatures. I don't know. I like it as an inclusion, even if it's not always the strongest, because it does represent kind of a very unique part of most metagames. I think only Standard really doesn't have a burn deck, and I guess not Legacy, Vintage doesn't really have a burn deck, to the best of my knowledge.
Well, the prison deck I think shuts that down. But so this top 8. So let's say you've picked out the 8 decks. How are we going to store and sleeve all these decks? That's probably the next big question. What I recommend, and this is what I don't do this from personal experience. Like I said, I hate maintaining a collection. So this is what I've noticed other people do. They have a big box with individual deck boxes, and they keep all their little deck boxes inside the bigger box. My friend at work uses a suitcase.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of people out there making products for this. I would recommend, if you're a little more budget conscious on this sort of stuff, what is it? Ultra Pro makes a series of deck boxes that are just kind of plastic rectangular prisms with a lid that flips down and sort of fits snugly, and that's it.
Now I will be
like $2.
I do use Legion for that, although I think they're more like $5.
Yeah, Legion is also a great product, makes great products. In terms of sleeves, I would again recommend using the same color sleeves. I'm going to take a moment to, pitch. I really personally like the Dragon Shield Dragon Shield mats. And I've heard really good things about the Ultra Pro Eclipse sleeves, which feels very strange to say, but apparently they are wonderful sleeves. I have yet to see some in the wild, and I'm probably picking some up to try them out.
Which ones are these?
The Ultra Pro Eclipse. So
they're really good. Yes.
Yeah. Have you actually had a chance to play with them? Or
I have not played full games with them, but I helped Aaron Rubin re-sleeve his deck on Friday, and they felt pretty good.
Okay, yeah. So, we've also pitched them before. Potomac Distribution, just Potomac Dist, DIST.com. You can buy bulk sleeves there. But in terms of maintaining the lists, I would say, keep an ear to the ground and just sort of be aware. Like when Burning Tree Emissary or something of that magnitude hits the format, start watching the deck lists to see if something new crops up. And also, maybe toss in, if you're doing an eight deck thing, maybe toss in one that's just a pet deck. Like, I don't know, maybe you like the black-white Pestilence deck that's been seeing a moderate amount of success online. Maybe that's
maybe you like Midnight Gaunt.
Yeah, maybe you like this Rally the Peasants Midnight Gaunt affair, and that could be, your sort of your one pet deck that you get to slip in there and is really just sort of self-serving, but you enjoy it and other people might as well. I don't know. So in the great scheme of things, I can't really say much besides watch the meta and see what happens. And especially if a deck kind of drifts off, see if parts of that deck get picked up by something else. Don't, go selling your cards immediately as soon as a deck drifts from popularity, because who knows? Maybe there is a return of Mono Blue Delver in a couple sets. We've got Iconic Masters coming out.
I think once you own cards, especially format staples, if you're interested in the format, you should not be looking to get rid of them.
Yeah, and obviously, don't put your hobby before actual real life stuff. Not trying to say that, but most of the time, if you got your finances in check, just hang on to them. You will find another use for them. Delver does not magically stop being good once Mono Blue is no longer good. It just finds a new home. But yeah, just find yourself nice deck boxes that serve the functional role and go for it. I mean, a lot of these cards are pretty cheap. There are some pricey ones. Maybe you don't want a whole bunch of decks running red and having to buy up a whole bunch of Pyroblasts, although those are cheaper now on paper. Counterspell is creeping up to the $1 mark. Just put some planning and foresight into it. Just, and ear to the ground, as I said. Anything else you want to add on this topic, Adrian?
No, it sounds good to me.
I do have to say your dedication to not maintaining a collection is frankly baffling to me. But
Come over and sort my cards, dog.
yeah, let me just hop onto a plane. Actually, my coworker, I went over to his house to play EDH a couple of weeks ago, and he legitimately just has a bookshelf that's piles of Magic cards, and I swear my eye kept twitching every time I looked over there. I was like, oh, how can you do this?
I don't mean to alarm you, but I will say it live on air because I don't know if you know yet that I recently purchased tickets to come see you at the end of August.
Oh, that's true. That's true. We will have a live reunited show and all sorts of assorted shenanigans to follow. It'll be fun. Maybe we'll actually have spring weather by then because it is still 60 degrees outside.
I'm going to be there for like a week. You better be ready.
Yeah. We'll have some fun, and the listeners will get to, have a little special episode there for them. Now I'm looking at our document here, and I don't see our little comedy bit at the end. You got something for me?
Yes.
Do you?
Yes. I did not just think this up. I'm gonna hit random card in Gatherer, and you're gonna have to tell me what card it is.
Okay, so how much information can I get from you?
Well, that one was a mountain, so we're not doing that one. All right. Here's a common.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Good start.
All right. I'm going to keep going with the information until you get it or don't get it.
Okay.
This is a 5-drop from Legends. It costs GG3. It is a creature elemental. It has only flavor text. It says, after the battle, an eerie silence gripped the forest. The loser's remains were lightly dusted with green. It is a 3/6. The artist is Jesper Murfors, and it was reprinted as a common in 8th edition.
It's an elemental?
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get this. The original text on it was Summon Monster.
So the frustrating thing is I'm pretty sure that there's a tree folk that fits those exact same descriptions. It's from one of the early sets, and it's a 3/6, and it has no text on it.
Let me describe the thing in this picture to you. It is a man in the roughest sense of the term. It has large, scraggly teeth and what appears to be some sort of antlers protruding from its forehead. It's Jesper Murford's art. I love that guy. He altered my ATOGs.
Yeah, it looks I can picture it in my head. Like I can.
It's called Moss Monster.
Okay, yeah, I didn't get that. Give me one more just so we can round out the episode. I want to get one of these.
All right, I think you'll get this one. This is a H-drop. It's WWW5. It is a legendary creature.
It's a chroma.
Angel. Yes.
Okay, there we go.
All right, that one was easy. One more.
Okay.
That's a forest. We're not doing that. All right, this is a good one. This is originally from Tempest, was reprinted in M11, is a rare, is a 2-mana artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, blank deals 2 damage to you. Sacrifice a creature. Target opponent gains control of blank. Flavor text here.
This is Jinxed Amulet.
Idol. Or very close.
What is it? Jinxed Ring?
Idol.
Ah, okay. I can see the picture of that one in my head as well. I didn't know that got reprinted in Modern. Weird.
Yeah, I want to say that Saffron Olive might have a video with Jinxed Idol shenanigans, or maybe that's a Cloudstone Curio deck. I don't know. It's a weird artifact deck.
It would not surprise me, but yes, I do remember that one. The original art is like someone literally like handing this like little totem to someone, right? At like waist level or so.
It looks like a pile of goop with a hand. I don't really know. The M11 one looks like someone's hand. I don't know. The art on this is interesting.
What am I thinking of then? It must be some other Jinxed card. Oh yeah, wow, that's a really weird little piece of art.
Jinxed Ring is like 2 people shaking hands.
That's the one I'm thinking of. There we go. I do like the fact that I'm on Gatherer, and I like the ruling. Your opponent can use this ability to give the card back to you. I just like that had to be clarified.
Heck of a time. Well, I guess what you... Oh, yeah. Because the original wording says target opponent gains control of Jinx Idol permanently.
Yeah.
It's been fixed with Gatherer.
Yeah, it's oh man.
Good
old the old text. I actually had this come up when I was playing EDH the other day with what is it, Kismet, which is artifacts, lands, and creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped, but it says target lands, artifacts, creatures that target opponent controls enter the battlefield tapped, and I had to be like, let me get the Oracle text for you. It's everyone. Just trust me on this. But yeah, good old Magic. All right, that was a good little bit, even if it was kind of spur of the moment. You wanna take us out of the show, Adrian?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for joining us today. This podcast is brought to you by the support of our Patreons or patrons. Please consider supporting us if you like. Maybe a little too desperate on that one. Consider supporting us if you like the show. Check out this video in the description of this podcast for details on where to find us. We'd like to remind you, if you're listening to this on a platform with reviews, they're always appreciated as they boost our visibility, even if you leave a bad one. If you've got a deck list or an idea for a topic, feel free to contact us either via our website or by emailing us directly at colorcommentary@gmail.com. Special thanks to Pat's Games and L, and I suppose Original Magic Art. Till next week, this is Adrian and Mike, and we are signing off for Color Commentary.